One of the prospects getting the most buzz in the 2022 NBA draft is someone who has not played a minute of college basketball so far. And for all we know, they might not play a minute before draft time. Of course, I'm talking about Kentucky's SHAEDON SHARPE. Here's what we know about Sharpe, who's the former ESPN #1 prospect in his high school class. Now, Sharpe graduated before October 19th, so this meant that he was able to enroll at Kentucky early, but he planned to sit out the season. However, given what we know about the NBA draft and that Sharpe is one season out from his high school graduation, potentially this makes him eligible for the 2022 draft. So if that's the case, are we looking at a potential top 5 pick? This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down.
SHAEDON SHARPE should be a threat in transition right off the bat in the NBA. I imagine this would also be the case in college basketball, but the NBA is better suited to that run and jump athleticism that Sharpe has in abundance. He is a powerful dunker off 2 feet in the open court, and right now Sharpe is mostly a straight line driver, but he does show some finesse from time to time. It's not always just explosiveness. Still, Sharpe for sure does have that head above the rim vertical leap. I don't know for sure that he's a 1% type of athlete, but he is definitely right below that. Sharpe is more of a transition finisher than a transition starter. He will end the move with a dunk, layup, or lob rather than be the one pushing off the defensive rebound. In the future though, I want to see him do grab and go stuff more often because he is a good rebounder who should be able to get into his own offense off of misses. One thing to highlight as part of Sharpe's game in transition is his capacity to finish lobs. The Canadian wing rises above the rim effortlessly. Sharpe can get up in and finish in traffic. Generally, he times himself well, and of course his 7-foot wingspan comes into play here. Sharpe is not super tall at around 6'6", but his arms go on for days. Most importantly, these types of plays are easy ways to get points while the rest of his offensive game fleshes out. So let's get into what that means. At this stage of his development, I like SHAEDON SHARPE most off the ball. I will break down a bit later what he can do on the ball, but for now I want to discuss his cutting. Similar to his lobs in transition, Sharpe is good in the half court when he can run and jump. His teams run a lot of set plays for him that lead to Sharpe being able to rise into the air and play above the rim. Often this can be a pin down type of situation and Sharpe can then throw it down with one or both hands. He finishes emphatically off strong cuts, and it is nice to see such aggressiveness with his movement off the ball. Again, he mostly jumps off 2 feet, but he can do so off a single foot as well, and I appreciate the athletic versatility. When Sharpe gets downhill, he is hard to stop because of his blend of size, power, and sometimes finesse. Sharpe's body control is also an underrated part of his game, in my opinion. In the NBA, you can easily picture him coming in along the baseline to finish or dunk. Along those same lines, Sharpe can also play in the dunker spot. None of this is particularly eye-catching or anything like that, but I want to emphasize that Sharpe's athletic tools and skill set translate to different roles on offense. Even though he is still fairly raw, Sharpe can already do many things because of what he already does have. Through that, Sharpe is productive without needing a ton of touches on the ball. On that note, that's why it is also important to touch on his offensive rebounding. It's no surprise that Sharpe has the means to crash the boards, but this is where his motor and competitiveness shows up. Sharpe can track the ball, collect it, and then put it back in. However, there's no doubt in my mind that creating for himself in the half court is still Sharpe's biggest improvement area. There are shades of gray to this like I will get into, but Sharpe really does need to keep growing here in my opinion. At times, especially early in his career, he was really hesitant about getting into his shot in the half court. That certainly has changed over the past year or so, but Sharpe can still struggle to be effective consistently against a set defense. Sharpe could be more fluid getting into his shot off the dribble, as he is still a little slow and mechanical. While you can see the flashes in the overall package, Sharpe has not always created separation as well as you would expect. Like I'll get into, he likes to operate off a couple dribbles before rising into his J. However, he is still inconsistent with his mechanics, especially with his legs that can fly out at times. Sharpe doesn't always go up and down the same way, and I think he needs that regularity to get to the next level. Finally, Sharpe is not overly creative with his handle. He is still more reliant on being able to shoot over others than I am comfortable with, and it would certainly benefit Sharpe to get easier looks going forward. Sharpe's inconsistency with his pull-up extends to the perimeter, although once again that has improved as of late. Sharpe can have some hard misses from 3 though, where again he is not too creative setting up his shot. The 18-year-old Canadian largely operates out of hang dribbles, more on that later, but he either does that, or as of more recently, he started using a step back 3. Now this is a pretty good tool for Sharpe to have, but it's still inconsistent. He gets good range on it though, so you can see this becoming a part of his game down the line. Still, Sharpe is very much a work in progress who needs to get reps in. Part of his appeal is that you can spot glimpses of Sharpe becoming a 3-level scorer, so he must improve his self-creation in the mid-range and then extend that out to the 3-point line. However, it's important to make a distinction. One of the things that I like the most about Sharpe is that he has identified his improvement areas and gotten better at all of them. Like I've been saying, one big example of this is his pull-up shooting. So far, I've discussed the room for growth in this department, but it's key to highlight that Sharpe has started showing big signs of improvement. I want to track this over a longer period of time just to be sure, but Sharpe really seems to have developed as a shooter recently. Using those hang dribbles or step backs that I mentioned earlier, Sharpe I think has made his release faster and now feels more comfortable bombing away from deep. Sharpe averaged 25 points per game while shooting 45% from the field in the last Nike EYBL. This was on good volume too, so I buy the improvement. If Sharpe becomes a sharpshooter, this opens up his gravity driving to the rim, which then benefits his overall game. Similarly, Sharpe must be commended for improving his half-court looks inside the 3-point line. What started as flashes all of a sudden now appear much more regularly, which is great to see. Again, that speaks to Sharpe's potential, but also his trend of improvement. He started off as a barely known guard in Canada before rising to the top of ESPN's rankings for his high school class. I'm not with Sharpe in the gym, but that speaks to him being a hard worker. Sharpe keeps defenders on their heels with his long dribbles, and then that lets him choose to either drive or pull up. He's quick enough to turn the corner and explode past defenders either way, but he's also long and now consistent enough to shoot over the top. Sharpe's handle still needs some work, but he can get to the rim in a few strides and then force the foul or finish. In the NBA, I mostly see Sharpe at the 3, but let's also get into some of the guard stuff. His handle, it's still too high, and Sharpe can still experience some difficulty getting to his spots. This is not overly worrying, but it's definitely something that he needs to improve, and it goes back to the creativity or the lack thereof that I mentioned earlier. Sharpe is mostly a straight line driver right now who can struggle in traffic and does not have too much in his bag just yet. In terms of passing, that has not really been Sharpe's role in any of his teams right now. I don't expect it to be in the NBA either, at least not until he gains real gravity as a scorer, and that will not be right off the bat except for a big surprise. Still, Sharpe has shown the capacity to make some basic reads coming out of screens. Sharpe mostly plays next to traditional lead guards, so this is a part of his game that needs to be explored more, and right now, it's just tough to project. However, what sets SHAEDON Sharpe apart is his two-way potential. Sharpe's defense, in my opinion, is the reason why he is getting top 5 buzz if he is in this year's NBA draft. Sharpe swallows up drives, and you can picture him being switchable 1 through probably 4 once he gets stronger. Sharpe can backpedal easily, and even though he kind of plays with high hips a little bit, he is quick twitch enough to react and long enough to contain. More on his motor later, but Sharpe can play with multiple efforts, and it's hard to drive past him. His strides are so long that he covers up a ton of space when moving laterally. Sharpe can step out on the perimeter easily and contain until the rim, where he then has a good chance of getting a block. Even if you manage to get the step on Sharpe, he can always recover, and shooting over his 7-foot wingspan is tough. At the rim, Sharpe already has the makings of a rim protector. Now, that does not mean that he'll play the 5, nothing like that, but I like him helping on drives or coming from the weak side. Obviously, Sharpe has some impressive bounce, and all of the stuff that applies to how he can play above the rim also factors into his flashes of rim protection. We still have to see how his reaction time translates against higher levels of competition, but there are reasons to buy in. This also shows that Sharpe has some understanding of off-ball defense, since he has to know when to come over, time his jump, etc. Sharpe's anticipation with his blocks also comes into play with his steals. Given his length and explosiveness, Sharpe is a threat in the passing lanes, who can then take the ball from one end to the other. However, what stood out to me about Sharpe the most when watching his defensive tape was this particular steal. It's almost like a signature move of his, but it's pretty unorthodox. This could be used on drives, even though it usually comes in transition, but Sharpe will wait for his opponent to come right at him, and then Sharpe opens up his body just enough and pokes his hand in at the right time to get the steal. This requires picture-perfect timing, and it's impressive to see how many steals like this Sharpe racks up. Once he forces the turnover, Sharpe is then free to handle in the open court and throw down a dunk. As for the bad, well, Sharpe's motor on this end of the floor fluctuates, but this isn't really a surprise. He doesn't even turn 19 until May, so he might not always be engaged or make a second effort, but as we've seen, he can definitely be impactful when locked in. In my opinion, this might just be the setting. Sharpe needs to play at a higher level to be more consistent on defense, so I have no big concerns here. Sure, his closeouts can be more disciplined here or there, or he might get lost off the ball at times, but again, those things are natural. At this stage of his development and given the tape that we have, I think it's more fair to focus on Sharpe's legit two-way potential and switchability on defense.
With SHAEDON Sharpe, there are tons of things to like, but before I get into that, I think it's important to make a distinction, which is that we don't know exactly what there is not to like. Now, this may seem like a little bit of a weird comment after, a 10+ minute scouting report video on Sharpe, but we only know what we have so far, and the tape that we have so far is not super extensive. Not only that, but it is a little bit spaced out, so while that does play well in terms of seeing Sharpe's progression, I think it's a little tougher to get a full picture of what his game looks like right now compared to, if I was doing Ty Washington from Kentucky. We've seen him play in college, we know how he looks like against higher competition, whereas with Sharpe, we really do not know that, and unless he plays in college next season, we won't know that. Still, right off the bat, what stands out to me about SHAEDON Sharpe the most is his two-way potential. I got into it in the video, and like I said, he might have a few lapses on defense here or there. His motor might fluctuate, but he's so young, he hasn't played a minute of college hoops, and I really think that this end of the floor is something where he's going to get a lot of money out of. Now, I touched on the steals in the video, but beyond that, Sharpe has the versatility, I should say, the mobility, the athleticism, the package to be a multi-positional defender. I think eventually we're going to get to the point, like I said, where he guards 1 through 4 pretty comfortably. This is definitely a guy that you can put on the point of attack. He can sort of smother them, swallow them up with his length. And not only that, but he can slide with them, he can backpedal with guards, he can stay with them all the way to the rim, get blocks, get steals, and from there, go down the other end of the floor. With Sharpe, like I said at the top of the video, I do think that his offense is still a work in progress, but what's been really interesting to follow is his development. Now, Sharpe, I guess you could say he's a little bit of a late bloomer just because he started off as this really unknown wing up in Canada, who then, became the ESPN #1 prospect of his high school class. That, like I said in the video, shows what his work ethic is like, but I don't think this is a case of, oh, alright, this guy has improved so much, is he going to improve more? Well, I think Sharpe is going to improve more because he's still so young, he's still really early in that developmental curve, and what I like the most about him is that we've seen him improve, pretty much game after game, month after month, I should say, year after year. Those deficiencies that I sort of highlighted early on in the video in terms of getting to his jump shot consistently, getting to the rim in the half court, because, early on in his career, he was only really very much a transition dunker, a transition finisher sort of player. But now he's good enough where he knows how to use his handle, still needs a little bit of improvement, but he knows how to use his handle, his length, his athleticism, his physicality to get all the way to the rim, finish there, lay the ball in. He still has to grow a little bit more in that area, but I'm very encouraged by, his leap in half-court creation. And of course, that touches on his jump shooting as well. So with Sharpe, what we've seen most recently, the EYBL tape that we've seen most recently before he got to Kentucky, he made a big leap, seemingly. I touched on it in the video. High percentage, high volume of shots from deep. Looked pretty good. I do think that he still has to get a little bit better and a little bit more comfortable at creating separation with his shot so that he's not so reliant on just shooting over the top of people. But you can definitely see the progress there. I want to track it over a longer period of time. I want to have a bigger sample size before I can really say, all right, 100% I buy into this, or 100% I don't buy into this, or, it doesn't have to be so extreme, but you get what I'm saying. Either way, Sharpe, I really love his two-way potential, but even more than that, I love his willingness to improve. I love how he has improved, and all signs point to the fact that he will keep improving. I think he's a good player to have in the NBA, two-way wing, fits the game nowadays. Definitely someone who does not need a ton of touches to be productive early on, but if you give them to him, given what we've seen most recently, it does seem like he can take advantage of them. So do I think Sharpe is a top 5 pick? That's hard to say. We haven't seen him play 1 minute, 1 second of NCAA basketball. So I don't want to be that guy who says, all right, SHAEDON Sharpe is for sure a top 5 pick. But do I see a pathway towards him being a top 5 pick on draft night? Absolutely. And given what I've seen from him so far, I would not let him drop out of the top 8, definitely not the top 10. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think of SHAEDON Sharpe, what you think he will go in the NBA draft, what you think his NBA future looks like. And of course, if you enjoy the channel, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.